Welcome back to another edition of the Mindset Entrepreneur Video Podcast. I am your host, Mark Altman, and I'm here with my special guest today, Chris Fisher, Shawn Mauro, partners in Live Life Capital Partners. Thrilled to have you guys today. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So I'm going to start on a rare personal note today that I am a big believer in business, that it is really important to surround yourself with positive, skilled, competent, happy people. And I got to tell you, I met these guys several months ago and really gravitated to who they are as people, their trust, their integrity, and really just their demeanor. They're really great to be around. And so I'm really happy to have you guys here. You really represent a lot of the values that I like to bring on in companies. So really happy to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
So let's start with one thing that's very unique about you guys, which is, I think, as entrepreneurs, you're partners. And a lot of small business owners, they don't have partners. They just do it on their own and figure it out. So would love to kind of get the background of how your partnership evolved, and also kind of maybe some of the challenges that you both might have that others don't. So Shawn, if you could start, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure thing. So I've actually known Chris for about a decade now. We met right out of college. Actually went to college with his wife at UMass Amherst. And, instantly we kind of hit it off. He's in finance. I was in finance myself. And, over the years, just kept in contact. He worked at Brown Brothers and Fidelity. I was at Merrill Lynch and Morgan Stanley. And so, we kept in contact over the years. And from a partnership standpoint, I always thought it was very important, just given the complexity of our industry, that you have competent partners that can, assist you. And so I kind of talked to Chris really about getting involved in a partnership about a year and a half ago. And I don't think it took too much convincing because he really liked what we were doing. And we kind of hit it off.
Hey, Chris, go ahead.
And I'll just add to that. I mean, I think, Shawn touched on it, but I think one of the great things is, partnerships are founded on trust. You have to trust your partners, imminently. And you also need to have complementary skills if you want to really add value to each other and almost have a fusion. So I think Shawn and I have that kind of in spades where, we have different backgrounds, but together, we can serve our clients really well based on our backgrounds.
Well, and would you say that, do you find as partners, a lot of times with small businesses don't have partners, is such a workload, a different kind of workload. Do you feel like having that other person to bounce people off of, to delegate and share responsibilities and things, that's got to be huge as kind of support systems as you continue to grow your business?
Yeah, I think we take like a kind of a swarm approach almost where, every client gets the full benefit of, Shawn's skills, my skills. We have, Sue Fector for client service and Georgia Giolekis for our family office. And every client gets the benefit of that. So, you come in as a client, you don't get one person and they have to do everything for you. You get, the best skills from each individual.
Okay.
So you do get to balance the workload, but you also boost the client experience.
So Shawn, I got to be honest with you. Your industry, wealth management, okay? Boy, I have been approached by so many people over the years, and I've talked to so many people in the industry, and it just makes my head spin, because how do I tell who the right solution is? Who are the right people to deal with? What is the right company to deal with? And we know it's about trust, right? You have to trust, I know that, but how do you help kind of educate people on knowing what the right choice is? What are the rules that people should follow to know how to pick that solution?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, because there's so many wealth managers out there, and they're pitching some of the similar things, planning, and you're right. I mean, it starts the foundation. It starts trust, and some people I feel like maybe don't spend enough time on that because it is crucial. But you really got to ask yourself the questions, of who, do I enjoy working with this person? Who is a team that is backing them? What type of investments do they get access to? What type of, benefits, am I going to see from working with them? And I would say the bigger thing which you need to focus on is you really need to find a partner yourself. So I feel like wealth managers, people are often afraid to maybe open up completely to them, and they think, okay, well, he's just going to manage my investments. Your wealth manager should be a partner with you and help you solve the problems, of life. You're trying to get through, you're trying to, get to a certain point, and it's really finding a partner versus finding a wealth manager. And I think, we've taken that approach, and it's just added a lot of value to our relationships, and it is a differentiating piece for us.
Well, and Chris, one thing that blew me away about how you both do differentiate what you're doing with your company and your staff is, wealth managers are always talking about family values and retirement and really being sure everybody's taken care of. And you guys really, it's not just words for you, it's really actions. I mean, the kinds of services you offer and the way you interact with your clients. So could you talk a little bit about that? Because I think those are real differentiators for you.
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. And I think it goes to a lot of what Shawn was speaking about. I mean, we take a really holistic approach of really getting to know the client, on, what does their family structure look like? What's important to them? What do they really need? What are their dreams and desires? And then, you build first, a financial plan, but also kind of help them from everything from strategy on their business to how do you help educate their children. But it's really just, again, being a partner with them, helping them beyond just the traditional stock and bond picking, which is what most people think about when they think about wealth managers. So really being a holistic partner to them.
And Shawn, what about putting your language into human language? I mean, I don't know a lot about your industry in terms of how to understand how to read stocks and portfolios and things like that. But what about how you communicate with your clients differently so they can actually be educated and connect with what you're saying as opposed to the standard newsletter? Talk a little bit about that, if you would.
I mean, I think that's a huge piece. And, unfortunately with our industry, there's a lot of industry jargon. And, even the way that, your broker dealers and custodians, report a statement to you, it's people get confused. They get lost in the mix. And so I feel it's a very important job as a wealth manager to be able to, explain the differentiating pieces to your clients and provide the customization that they're looking for. I mean, literally on our end, we're able to customize reports per what our clients are looking for. So if there's a business owner that wants things kind of broken down in a P&L fashion and maybe more detailed, we can do that. If it's someone that wants a more kind of simplistic approach and wants to see the bigger numbers and not get down to a more granular level, we can do that. And so a lot of it just comes back to, educating our clients. And you should have an advisor that educates you. You should always know what you own and understand why you own it, because so many people just, say, okay, I don't understand it, but I trust someone to do it. Really, that's a fault of your advisor, because your advisor should be explaining those investments to you, educating you on them and why you own them.
So guys, this question's for both of you. Let's start with Chris. I'm a guy that likes to work with people who are passionate about what they do. They literally get out of bed every morning and get excited, not for the money, because you just love what you do. So, I mean, Chris, were you like in grade school in fourth grade going, oh man, I can't wait to become a wealth manager one day? Like, how did that all evolve for you? Was it something that did connect to childhood, or how did that all play out for you?
Sure. I mean, my first taste of the industry was an internship sophomore year. My major was East Asian Studies, and something totally removed. I was really passionate about languages, and then I got my first taste working for a hedge fund marketing firm, where I got to look at the numbers, and I really fell in love with looking at the numbers, seeing how patterns moved, trends, and then from there, right out of school, I decided that's what I wanted to focus on. So, spent my career looking at, working through business school, did a investment management master's, and kind of continued to build on that education. Went to Fidelity, did the macroeconomic view, so looking around the world, and then, really diving into the numbers in my last role, which was in M&A. So you got to work directly with individual companies, but really what tied it all together was this financial analysis, but really understanding how do markets move. And so that, really is what excites me. Understanding, what drives, stocks, what drives bonds, how does everything tie in together, kind of piecing together that picture and understanding patterns. And so that's really what got me excited about the industry, and then being able to work directly with clients to toss it off.
Well, so what a specific major, East Asian Studies. So I have to ask you, if I was to poll 100 people who had that major, is the route that you took a typical route with that major, or not so much?
I think what it taught me was to think differently. I went to a liberal arts college, and it wasn't really go and learn about this trade. It was get an understanding of how to think, because the world's dynamic, right? You can't learn one thing and carry that on for your whole life. You need to understand, how does history play? History is a big part of the markets. It doesn't repeat itself. The quote is, it doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. So having that foundation is important. And, a lot of times people think about languages tying really closely into math, and it's a similar kind of skill set. So yeah, I think, it's learning how to think rather than learning a specific concept.
All right, and Shawn, what about you? Were you forgoing sports as a kid and just sitting in front of your computer studying stocks, or what's your story?
Yeah, I was not. No, I played my fair share of sports growing up. For me, I've always gravitated towards numbers. And so having a strong number background, but also working with people. I grew up working in my father's grocery store. I knew pretty much the whole town that I grew up in because everyone went through the doors. And so when I did an internship my senior year at Merrill Lynch, a light bulb kind of went off, and I was like, this is the best because I can put my skill set with numbers to work, but also, work with people. I mean, I love working with people. I'm very passionate about it. And I like to sit and, just figure out how I can solve the problems they have. Yes, our core competency is investment management, but there's so much more that we can do and we do for our clients. And I think people may limit themselves too with their wealth advisors to not, utilize them, or maybe, there's other advisors out there that can provide them with more.
So here's a good question for our audience. I want you to think about this as Shawn and Chris answer this question, because it's really a tough question. The word trust is thrown around by everybody, okay? And so people want to feel like they can trust you if they're going to work with you. But then if you were to ever to pose the question back and say, well, what would you need me to do to show that I could trust? Well, most people in business will say, I can give you references and I can give you testimonials. But to me, guys, I have to tell you, I think the way to really establish trust is to learn about each other's core values and how you see things and how you process information, because that if you have similar core values, there's a good chance. What are your thoughts? Shawn, for you, do you think the core value element, is there another piece that you think is important to establish that trust in the beginning of a relationship?
That's a good question. I mean, core values, it's important for, you to really identify what values you're looking for in your advisor. And, to say that there's, I guess, specific values that you're trying to identify. I mean, you want to look at, what means the most to you, and then look at maybe how your advisor would apply those in their own life.
I agree. I think that's a great answer, actually.
I think not enough people, kind of do like lift up under the hood.
Yes.
And actually see, what's there. A guy, you meet with an advisor and he can talk the talk and he looks like he's, prim and proper. But, if you really get to know your advisor, I think that's the coolest thing. That's where I develop some of the closest relationships with my clients, and, they know my kids and I know their kids, and, there's things that we share and maybe vacation spots that we have alike, but you got to dig deep to get those core values. You're not going to get that, on the surface.
So Chris, be a problem solver. You ready?
Let's go for it.
So I'm sitting at home. I'm going to simulate someone who is pondering hiring a wealth manager. And this is what's going through my mind right now. Geez, I don't even know if I have enough money to use a wealth manager. I wouldn't even know what that amount of money is. And God, this is money I've worked for my whole life. What happens if something goes wrong and I don't even know what they're going to do with it and how it's going to go, and all these fears. And we know decisions are ruled by fear, right? Fear gets in the way of moving forward and changing habits and all these things. So for the person that's sitting at home, Chris, and really having these fears, what can you do to quell some of those fears? What advice can you give them to make them feel better about that stuff?
Sure. No, it's a great question. I think it's one that a lot of people struggle with. And I think it really comes down to a couple things. It's education, and it goes back to trust as well. So, when we think about designing a portfolio for someone, it's not they come in, here's a certain amount of money, what can you do with it? It's understanding, why are you investing? What's it for? What's your time horizon? And then saying, okay, let's apply a portfolio that matches that. And so, a lot of people see headlines and they say, oh, the market's going up or down or sideways or whatever it's doing, but it's educating your clients on how do markets move, taking the time to do that. And so if you have, 10 years to invest, the market movement in 1 or 2 days shouldn't matter as much to your time horizon. But it's having that conversation with them to say, let's explain how investments work. Let's go, under the hood of a portfolio and say, okay, the purpose of this investment's this, the purpose of this part of the investment's this is how they move together. But it's really about I think it's about education and having frequent communication as markets move.
Well, go ahead, Shawn.
No,
Please,
I was just gonna add to that. I mean, one of the things which I often say to people when I first get introduced to them, and maybe they're asking a lot of questions about, I'm nervous about the markets, and the first thing I say is we don't have to do anything. Let's stop. Suppose they're just sitting on a lot of cash. It's not going to go away overnight. Let's put together a plan. And so the planning piece is so crucial that so many people avoid. They try to skip and go right to, let's put that money in investments. And so when you bring it back to the plan, that's what people should benchmark the returns against. And that's how you create a plan which is going to get them from point A to point B. Because when it comes down to it, if you can apply that and you reduce the risk on an overall portfolio, increases the probability you're going to get to the end point. And so we spend so much time on planning before we invest a penny. And so that gives people the comfort. And that whole planning process, it's complimentary. There's no cost to it. And so people, may think that there's a cost to it, but the majority of planners out there and the way that we operate is there's no cost to the planning piece. And that's where people need to spend more time.
So what you're saying is basically if there's 10% of you sitting at home thinking this might be a good idea, there's virtually no downside. As a matter of fact, you could take it a step forward and say, if you have a core value of learning and educating yourself, take advantage of the complimentary service so you can find out that this is the right decision for you to move forward. So there's really no downside, right?
There isn't. I mean, that's how I approach, every relationship. I say, we're going to go through this planning process and it's going to be lengthy. You're going to come out with a great comfort and know exactly where you stand and where you need to go. And, if at the end of that period of time, you enjoy working with us and you want to continue that relationship, and that's where we can take someone on as a client. But if not, at least they've been able to educate themselves, like you said.
So a few last questions. So one, Chris, for you, could you give some examples of the type of clients and the type of people who you typically work with? So if you're sitting at home as an audience person, you're like, God, I wonder if I'm a good fit for them. So what are some companies you work with? What are some individuals you work with? Maybe some characteristics.
Sure. Yeah, we focus on a pretty wide variety of clients, but I think what we can add a lot of value is, people that want to design a plan that have aims for retirement, or you might have a business owner that says, okay, a lot of my liquidity is tied up in a business, but I'd like to understand, how can you help me grow the business? How can you be a partner, a consultant to me? How can you educate me so that post capital event, I want to invest this money. How would that happen? How can you help me identify the right partners that need to be around me? So I think you can help business owners quite a bit. I think basically people who don't want to focus their time on spending their, mind share thinking about the markets. They want to pass that off to somebody who thinks about it all the time.
So if I'm a business owner, and I'm going to give you an extreme example. If I'm a business owner, I have no money in savings, but in my business account, I've got $500,000 sitting there. Okay? It's just sitting there. It's in a savings account. It's in some kind of loan. You're saying, why? You're getting no return. Is that an example? Would that be a client for you guys? As someone who might not have savings, but they have a lot of liquid money in their business that they're really not getting any return on? Is that a kind of client?
I think every business owner should have a wealth advisor that they work with to begin with, whether they have, $500,000 in the account or whether they have, 10,000 in their operating account of their business. Your wealth advisor should be a partner in that case. But there's so much that we can do in that, I guess you should have, partners that provide you advice, both, tax and, investment management. All these partners you should take advantage of, because if you're not, you're smart at what you're doing. It's not your core competency. And so you should work with other professionals that, can provide great advice in those areas. So, absolutely. We do a lot with business owners, everything from setting up 401ks to profit sharing to cash balance plan, which, it adds great value. You're taking businesses that are profitable that, they're paying corporate tax on all that gain, and now all of a sudden they can put that in the retirement plan, and they kind of pause and they're like, well, I don't need to pay tax on this, and I can put it in my retirement plan. Yeah. And so, we often run into situations like
Well,
that.
and you guys must, it's somewhat amusing when you think about it, right? Because we all look for experts, right? If you have medical problems, you go to a doctor. If you have legal problems, you go to a
Correct.
lawyer.
Yep.
But money, your future, your family, most people don't have the understanding background, but they don't want to have someone coach them or mentor them in that area. It doesn't really make a lot of sense when you think about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a huge point. And part of what we're trying to do now is educate people, because people have this facade that wealth managers may be expensive, right? So they're having to pay for that. But what we've found is, because of, the access we get, types of investments we get, we can literally almost get clients into, say a similar fund, but at a lower expense ratio, which covers our cost completely. So now, clients essentially may be getting the same investment here, but they also have a wealth manager, which is now guiding them through. And there's a lot more that we can kind of layer in. So the whole facade of wealth managers are expensive, I mean, I think it's a falsity. And, maybe because of low cost options, people have been too focused on, doing things themselves. And because it's easy when things are going well. But, market trends, always come up and down. And so it's important to, like you said, have an expert working with you.
All right, so let's wrap up today. Let's talk a little bit about your personal lives, guys. Chris, let's start with you. If you could share some of your priorities in your personal life and passions and hobbies in your personal life, just so that our audience can get to know you guys a little bit.
Sounds good. Yeah. So I live with my wife and my 2 kids and 2 little girls, Ava and Arya. We live in Needham. So that's my first priority. That's my passion. That's where I love to spend any extra time we have. And, we love just, being around each other, going on road trips. So yeah, my second passion is running. I grew up, doing track 3 seasons.
Wow.
That's really where I've, focused a lot of my athletic life. And so that's where I like to spend time outside of work and
Awesome.
outside of the girls.
Awesome. What about you, Shawn?
So same thing. I have a growing family. So I have 3 kids at home, so 2 girls and a young boy. And, I'm just a believer in, your family is the rock in your life. And, I'm very passionate about them. I love spending time with my kids. It's definitely my favorite thing. Also too, I mean, I ski, I read, I do some of those activities. And I mean, what I'm really passionate about is this. I love being a business owner. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think other business owners might be able to relate to it, but I'm passionate about the business that we're in. It means a lot to me. And, just like I try to do in my own life, we try to solve people's financial problems so that they can spend more time living life. And that's where, we came up with the name of the company is Live Life Capital Partners. And I'm very passionate about it. And I think it's great. And I get to see success stories of my own clients, and we get to share them. And it's just become such a big part of my life that I guess when you said passionate, I had to, it's my part of my business.
Love it. And the best way to reach you guys, for any of our audience members watching, what would be the best way to contact you guys?
Yeah, so I mean, you can look us up at our website, which is www.livelifecapital.com. You can reach out to us that way, or you could Google us and call. The lines are always open, so we're happy to speak with you.
Chris Fisher, Shawn Mauro, these are the guys. Listen, honestly, I have to say that, again, meeting people who really care about people and the experience and the relationship, that's what life's all about, personally or professionally. So really appreciate you joining us for another edition of the Mindset Entrepreneur Video Podcast. Look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great one.